All right, so we just got done beating Detroit Become Human, or I don't even know if you consider it beating. You got to experience Detroit Become Human and sort of just experience what that game has to do. That was insane, and I don't even know. I don't even have my emotions yet. It was crazy. So, um, how we rate things, we have 11 categories, and we will base score 1 to 10 on the categories, and then we'll get an average, and that will be the score for the end of the game. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the graphics and visuals. The game is stunning through and through. The art style is great, very, very realistic to the point where that's like a big premise of the game. Visually, it's just an absolute masterclass. And I couldn't even get the game to work on ultra. Like we were playing on fairly medium to low graphics, and I can't even imagine what this game looks like on ultra. Like amazing. So we're gonna go ahead and throw that one at a 9.5. I would say this is probably the only part of the game that is horrible. Um, Now let me at least give some, how do I say this? Some clarity before I give it the score. So I'm playing this on the PC. This is ported. This was originally for the PlayStation. So I do have to give that input before giving a score. The controls are not great. There was lots of times where I felt like I'd be walking straight and then all of a sudden we just do a circle for fun, which is totally cool. I'm down, but it didn't feel great. There's lots of barriers where you can't walk past certain areas in between couches, different things like that. That even though it doesn't take away from the gameplay, it is kind of annoying and very noticeable. And there was a couple times where it took me out of the moment. However, the controls aren't a vocal point in this game. You know, you're you're very much just making the decisions, and when you are actually playing the game, like making the or doing the quick time events, it didn't really feel bad there. So i can't I can't drop this down a whole bunch because really there isn't a lot going on with the controls to the point where you feel like you're limited by them. um and I don't think the controls are necessary for the enjoyment of the game. So we're gonna give it a 7, but that's being, if the controls, if I had to be more on point, that score would be a lot lower. But since you don't really have to be, it's fine. Story and narrative. The quality of the storyline, character development, dialogue, and how engaging and immersive the overall narrative is. If I could give it higher than a 10, I would. I don't know if I've played mini games that in multiple points I was overcome with emotion to the point where I'm like, Jesus fuck, like why do I care about this? Why do I care if Hank is my friend or not? Why do I keep disappointing him? Right? Why do I care so much about Carl? Why did I care so much about Alice? And even though we found out, spoiler alert, if you haven't played, warning, when you find out that she is also an AI, it didn't change. It was like, wow, that's crazy. That's still the kid we've been fucking protecting. Luther, great character. Like it just, it's so good at building a story and giving a shit about the characters. Like at first I thought that North was going to be, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's going to be Marcus's thing." And then you slowly start realizing like, "Ooh, she's pretty hardcore. She wants to go violence when it's just not the answer." Uh it's just so impeccable. So impeccable. And I mean, I guess there's more to this, and I talk about this while I play the game. But the overall message of the story is something that we all have to really start considering. AI is very apparent right there are robots on this planet now that are working. Like, not just machines, there's robots. Kai Cenat had a fucking robot, AI robot sent to him as part of a, I'm sure, a brand deal, but that robot is in his house doing shit. This is real. We're not far from Detroit Become Human. Audio and sound design, I felt like it did everything fine. There wasn't anything that I was, you know, as far as like sound effects and music, there wasn't anything that really stuck out to me. But the voice acting is on par. I felt like all the characters' voices were believable. Nothing seemed exuberant, like over the top. It was just very much on point, and that's easily going to be a 9. Replay value. I don't know if there's a game that would have a higher repeat value than this game. Honestly, like, I'm sitting here, and after every single chapter, I was like, wait, how did I miss all that? And just the ending alone, like, when myself and everyone who was watching, like, I got a 1% ending on one of them, meaning that happens very, very rare. Like, I immediately want to go back and play the game. So we're definitely gonna go at a 10 there. Difficulty and balance. I put the game on the experienced mode with this type of game. I felt like it did add to the game a lot, in the sense of, like, my quick action events had to be on point, or it's going to drastically affect the game. And I do have to say, not to fucking flex, but I was on fucking point for the whole goddamn game. I don't think I failed many quick time events, but I could see how it could drastically impact your game if you do. And I really, really enjoy that aspect of that. So that's going to be an 8. World design and exploration. So you definitely are on a fair, like, you aren't, you, you don't, yeah, it's not an open world game, right? When you're in a scene, you're in a scene. There's time to explore, and there's little areas that you can explore, and I feel like there is a lot that I missed by not exploring. And the world design, it felt alive. It really did. Even when there was NPCs, not saying the AI, but you know what I mean. The world seemed like it was always moving, and it makes you, like, it made me think, like, just in some of the scenes, like, you see cars driving past. I'm like, man, what's going on in that car? What's the story going on there? Like, it really does feel alive, rich. The environments were so different. The beauty from the visuals, like, really enhanced the world. Uh, there's nothing negative here for it. I'm gonna give it an 8.5. Performance and technical stability. Like I mentioned above, the controls weren't amazing, but I didn't feel like there was any frame rate issues, any loading issues. Um, it is a port, but I felt like it was a solid port. We saw a couple visual glitches, like we saw the one robot, like, scoot across the whole map, like, in T pose, and there was a couple little things here and there, but nothing that really is outstanding. So I'm gonna have to give that an 8. Community and multiplayer. There's no multiplayer in this game, so we're gonna miss it. Innovation and originality. So this is one where we could really have a conversation about, because there's been plenty of games where like this mechanic and this style of game exists. I don't know who sort of created it, but, like, you go all the way back to my favorite game of all time, which is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. It's a game where your decisions impact the whole world, right? You could be a Sith, and people could be terrified of you, to the point where you don't even, like, people won't even interact with you, and your team tries to take you down, and you have to fight your team. Or you can be a perfect Jedi. It's not, yeah, Fable, and there's so many games that have this built into it. And then there's even games that are that take this whole that I assume inspired this game, like the Walking Dead Telltale series, right? It's the same exact thing. There's quick action events, but it's all story rich narrative where your decisions impact the whole entire rest of it. And even in that first Walking Dead one, you can end the game with just yourself or your whole entire team of like 15 people. So, innovation and originality as far as um like what they're doing, it wasn't innovative in that sense. However, with that being said, I feel like there can be a conversation that they innovated the genre, or they didn't innovate the genre, they elevated the genre. I feel like this just set a new bar for games to follow in this genre. That now, are you comparative? Can you compare yourself to Detroit Become Human? Right? Like, the bar was here, and this game just stepped that bar up tenfold. There's so many more options and decisions. And not only that, but like I took the time every time I saw it to read the little tablets and see the news feeds. All news feeds we're for sure gonna see in our reality. So was the game innovative and original? No. The story was for sure original. Um, the gameplay mechanics were not new, nothing new. Uh, the game didn't really introduce any fresh ideas on the genre or be groundbreaking on like a genre itself. However, I feel like how creative the story was and how immersive and how many options there are, it elevated this genre, and I'm going to give it an 8. Hours versus dollars. Now this can be a very um, a very interesting conversation, because let's pull up our handy dandy notebook here. So we got 11 and a half hours in Detroit Become Human for our first gameplay, and we spent $40. So we're getting about, wait, I did that backwards. 28, how am I doing my math here? So $40 divided by 11 and a half hours, we're getting about three $3.50 an hour for a game, which isn't awful. I always say like what really would make a game great is if every dollar gets you an hour, right? So yeah, the math was backwards. So we're getting about 25 minutes or 25 minutes every dollar spent. Yeah. Which isn't awful, but I think that if we're talking, this game could probably be replayed, I think, from start to finish at least two full times before you start really feeling like, okay, I think I've reached my peak. So, and you're gonna know stuff a little bit faster. So let's say second and third playthrough, 7 hours, 5 hours, somewhere around there. You're right around almost $1 an hour for the payment. So we're gonna go 8.5 for that, which brings our grand score to, let's see, 9.5 plus 7 plus 10 plus 9 plus 10 plus 8 plus 8.5 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 divided by 10. It's going to be 8.6. An 8.6 out of 10. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think that if there was a way to bolster up the difficulty a little bit again, maybe make your decision making have to be even faster, that could be a fun mechanic. Um, Polish up, some of those weird glitches and the way the controls work. You're talking, you get a 9 here, and that's going to put you above 9. So yeah, 8.6 out of 10 is a very high score considering Silent Hill I gave a 7.35, and Brambles a 7. So I mean, this is the best game I've played so far in this new way of how I like to review stuff. So that's going to go ahead and conclude Detroit Become Human fully. What a masterclass of a game. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night.